Hello everyone, and welcome to the third video of the MBiotech prep playlist. Now, if you clicked on this and are watching this, that means one of three things. You've got an interview, in which congratulations, you are interested in the program and are learning what the interview process is like and seeing if that type suits you. Or three, you're just here for fun and looking for more information. Either or, welcome. And in this video, I'm going to take you through what my interview process was last year and give you advice along the way that I think would really help. So, starting off, congratulations on making it this far. And how the interview starts is first, you walk into the waiting room. Now, you might not seem too focused on this part. However, there is a very important thing that you should keep in mind. The interview actually kind of starts in the waiting room. What I mean by that is when you go in, they're gonna take your name, they're gonna write down all your information, and you're gonna be seated with your fellow interviewees. Now, it's very important how you behave during this time. A lot of that behavior actually gets noticed. They note down how professional you are. Because remember, this isn't your run-of-the-mill master's program. This is a professional degree in which they look at your soft skills, how you interact with others. Are you awkward? Do you just go on your phone when you're waiting for an interview? Or do you converse and try to lighten the mood and showcase your personality? So that's a tip right there. Next, once you enter the interview, around 5 to 6 years ago, there used to be a separate business and separate science interview. However, last year and maybe this year as well, they are going to make it as one 20 to 25 minute interview with a combined science and business portion. Now, combined science and business, what does that exactly mean? You'll be interviewed by one person who coordinates the business part and one person who coordinates the science part, who tends to be a professor that teaches the subjects like molecular bio. How you prepare for either or is pretty different. So I'll start with business because that one's a little easier to prepare for. With the business, it's your run-of-the-mill behavioral questions. So for example, being asked, tell me about a time you worked in a team, tell me about a time you handled conflict. These type of questions in which you showcase your past experiences. What's important is that you need to basically know your resume, CV, and cover letter like the back of your hand, because a lot of it is going to be asking questions pertaining to those experiences. Now, what's important is not trying to prep for every single behavioral question. It's prepping for those experiences and understanding holistically on what you did in each of those, so that way the same experience can be used to answer multiple different types of questions. Now, how do you answer those questions? You might have heard this before, but this one is king. The STAR method, STAR, and I like to add another R. What does it stand for? You have situation, where you start off by explaining, just brief summary, what the situation, what the experience is. Then you have your task, ST. The task is what's your role in the situation. Then you have action, what you did in that situation due to your task. Then you have R, which is result. Because of your action, what ended up resulting. You can use things like quantifiable metrics, like, oh, I led to 13% increase in stakeholder engagement, things like that. Now, I like to add another R, reflection. What is reflection? Well, after you've said the result, how does it link back to the question at hand? And how does it link back to improving, telling about you in MBiotech and furthermore in your career? So, for example, if they ask you a question on how you handled, tell me about a time you handled conflict. You talk about so-and-so, you were in a lab or whatnot, you worked in a team, you did this and you resolved the conflict. What were the lessons that you learned from it and how are you going to carry that forward? That's very important because they want to see that you're not just thinking about these experiences, you're thinking about MBiotech, you're thinking about your career throughout them and how you're going to grow from them. So those are your run-of-the-mill STAR behavioral questions. You can just search those up and practice. Now, another thing is I'd suggest having a very strong answer to tell me about yourself and why MBiotech. This was actually the first thing that I was asked. I sat down, shook their hands. First question, tell me about yourself. This is where you share your story. Your story is extremely important. Your story is the why. Why are you here? Why you and not another 4.0 student who has also done biotech research? You need to showcase that you have this background, and you're also thinking about the program. How does MBiotech fit into all of this? Now, what's very important is that this tell me about yourself kind of guides the rest of the interview. The more specific information that you give and the more well thought out your response is, obviously, as long as it's natural, is going to shape the questions that the interviewers actually ask about you. Because a lot of the questions they ask is they look at your CV, they look at your resume, and it's like, hey, so I noticed you mentioned that you did so and so experience. Tell me more about that. How did you use that to help another aspect of yourself, like your leadership? So you're essentially your experiences you're telling about yourself is already your interview. So that makes it kind of easy. Then is the science component. Now the science component is something you can't necessarily prepare for. However, there are a few things that you can keep in mind that might help. One, if you did research, you will most likely be asked about that research. And when you talk about your research, like a thesis project or volunteering in a lab, make sure you don't BS. Make sure you don't just pull out complex terminology and use it just to sound cool and smart. They will call you out on it. Remember, these are professors with years in the industry. They can see through any BS, right? So you should be able to explain your research and your role in it and be able to explain it almost like a 5-year-old. There might even be a question where it's like, explain your thesis project as if you're explaining it to a 5th grader. So you need to be comfortable in understanding your research, understanding the techniques, and why you did what you did. Throughout that, they will probably or they might ask questions related to the science subject matter of your research. For example, I did molecular biology, or if you were to do something molecular biology related, you might be asked molecular bio related questions like what is a PCR? Tell me about Western blots. What are the different levels of gene regulation? How would you do it? Now, there will be questions guaranteed in the science that will trip you up unless you're just some sort of uber smart, knows everything type of person. And they don't expect you to be that person. MBiotech trains you to think on your feet. They want to see if when you encounter a hard, tough question that you might not necessarily know the full answer to, what's your thought process? Are you able to utilize things you do know and craft a new response? What do I mean by that? What they want to see is not whether you have the right answer, but what your thought process is. And this was something verbatim that was told to me. I literally told them for one of my answers, I don't want to give away too much of what the questions are, but it was something that caught me extremely off guard. And I literally treated it like a conversation. I was like, okay, maybe I would do something like this if I were to do it. And I asked the professor what other information would be helpful in this, and answered back. Then I gave my answer. And they're like, perfect, nice. I straight up told them that was a guess. And they responded with, listen, in the end, it's not about getting it right or wrong, whether you knew it 100% or not. We want to see your thought process. Can you adapt on the moment? Can you think on your feet? And can you not get flustered? Speaking of getting flustered, you're going to be nervous before and after. I completely understand. It's okay to be nervous. Being nervous means that you care. However, don't let that disrupt the process of the interview. Be confident. Be yourself. The interview, essentially, they selected you here because they like your experiences on paper. They like who you are on paper. Show them who you are in person. Don't be afraid. Be personal. In that, tell me about yourself. On top of all your science, on top of all your experiences in the biotech pharma industry, what do you do in your free time? Relate. In the end, you're having a conversation with them. It should be treated like almost like a formality. Obviously, don't get cocky. Don't get overconfident. Be very humble. Be very open. They might ask you questions like, one thing I was asked for, what do you want out of this program? So this is where you showcase your research. I like these courses. I like this type of internship. I'm interested in going into so-and-so, maybe internship. Now, when you say that type of interest, like for example, I want to go into marketing, and I want that because X, Y, and Z. Don't just tunnel vision into that. Say, while I am interested in this, I'm really excited to learn about all the other roles and see where I might end up. You have that open mindset mentality. Very important. Another question that kind of caught me off guard, but you could be ready for, is talk to me about an industry trend in biotech and biopharma that resonates with you. I might have caught you off guard there, right? Well, this is something that's pretty easy to prep for, right? You just search up, look into trends that are meaningful to you. If they're meaningful to you, then you'll talk more passionately about them. Literally, before the interview, scroll through the headlines on like FierceBiotech, that's another source, and see what pops up. Read the article. It's a short page, and just check out why is it interesting to you. One of the things that I thought was pretty cool was how they used AI in clinical trials to help with patient recruitment. I thought that was extremely fascinating on how you can streamline clinical trials. Find something that resonates with you and don't be afraid to talk about it. They want to see that you're not just thinking about the MBiotech, you're thinking about your career and the industry as a whole. And finally, so that sums up the science and the business part. Overall, like I said, just be yourself, showcase that personality, and you'll do great. All right. So guys, again, congrats on making it here. And if you're interested in MBiotech and this type of interview style resonates with you, then feel free to apply. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any more questions or comments, just leave them down in the comments below. And if you want to see more type of this content, make sure to like and subscribe. All right, guys. Hope this was helpful and good luck. You got this.